Okay, so how many of you have installed Putty? Last time I suggested you all install Putty from putty.org. I hope you have installed that. If not,
Yes.
please do so. Yes,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, what we will do is we will launch another EC2 instance. So last time we did not connect to it, right? We only launched and let it be. This time we are going to connect to it. Okay, so I'll say launch an instance. I'll go through the exact same steps. In case you are facing any issue with one of these steps, just let me know. So we will be always using Amazon Linux AMI. I'll select that. For the class, the instance type is t2.micro. I'll select that. No changes here for now. I'll leave it as it is. I'm not changing anything. Storage, the default storage that comes as 8 GB. I'm okay with that. I'll let it be. Tags, leaving tags for now. And security group. So first time when all of you created, you might have created a new one. Second time
Hmm.
onwards, just do a select an existing security group and select the one which you had already created. Then you say review and launch and say launch. While saying launch, it will say select a key pair, just select the key pair and launch the instance. Okay. So when, again, similar to the security group, when you launched an EC2 instance the first time, you might have created a key pair and downloaded a file. Okay. Now what we have to do is we have to open Putty Gen. So Putty Gen will be installed along with Putty. So go to search, say Putty Gen and open this. Okay, so Putty Gen is open. Once Putty Gen is open, what you have to do is you have to say load uh, and it will open a box, browser box, and here in once you say load, it will open a browser window, and now you have to find the downloaded file, the key file that you downloaded. Okay, so let's find it. It might not be visible directly, so what you have to do is you have to say all files here and look for it. So it will be named as .pem, whatever name you had given, .pem. So select this file, say open. It will say successfully imported, so that is a valid option. Say okay. Once this it looks like this, say save private key. Once you say save private key, it will say are you sure about are you sure you want to save this without a passphrase? That is okay. Say yes. Okay, and give the same name as the downloaded file. So if downloaded file was class.pem, give the name only class, right, like this, and say save. Okay, once done, close everything. So now Puttygen is not needed. We'll close this. Let me know once you are able to do this. All of you, please convert. So you have to, the steps are open Puttygen, load, find the file by saying all files, just search for it, select it, open and say save private key. Give the name and save it. That's it. Let me know once you are able to save this.
Rishi, this
Yeah.
Putty and Puttygen, two different softwares, na? I think I have Putty.
Yes. Yes, these are different softwares, but if you downloaded Putty from putty.org, these will be
Mm.
part of the same bundle.
So I downloaded from putty.org only, but it is Putty, just putty.exe. So I
No,
can
you
do
can,
the same.
no, it will install default. You just type in the command prompt puttygen, you'll get it.
Okay.
So if you downloaded this first one, Putty, it has everything. So if you downloaded this, you might have only you assume that it is only Putty, but go to search prompt and try to search for it. You will get it.
I wrote actually, I wrote 64-bit. The site was different, I think. Putty.org, but the page was different.
Okay, not sure. So search for PuttyGen and download it.
Hello, hi Ruchi.
Yeah.
Yeah, one doubt. I loaded that file. After that, sorry, I missed that step after load.
So load
Yeah, that step
all
I did.
files.
Yes.
Let me do that, right? Else how am I going to tell you what happens?
Okay,
So
okay, okay,
say save private key. This save private key.
okay, okay.
Okay, this you have to select. Once you do this, it will allow you to save. So once you do this, say yes, give a name and save it. All of you were able to save the file?
Yeah, private key save.
Okay.
Rishi,
Once
right now I can't see my this one. I'm just creating another instance. Then I will do it. I'm doing now. I'll follow.
so let me know once done.
Yeah, yeah. Less than 5 minutes.
Hello, Rishi. While downloading, what I need to type on the browser, download Putty from putty.org, because I was seeing some different screen.
No, you have to download PuttyGen. Since you have already
Putty.
installed Putty, so now you have
So
to
I should
download this
just, can you show me? It's
PuttyGen.
okay. Okay, okay. Rishi, when I go to that website, na, I can see many options, package file, alternative binary file. So which one I should select? First one?
It should be an executable or an MSI file for Windows,
Is it
or
issuing
.exe or
which I
.msi.
downloaded? Can you see my screen? Can I share my screen with you? Actually, I'm
I
not
think
able
you
to
can
find this one. Sorry?
try sharing. Try sharing. See if you are able to share.
Yeah, I'll just try. Can you see my screen, Rishi?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, now I can see.
You can see this one. I got to this page. So I think in the morning I did this one. I have installed this one, this putty.exe, this one.
Go up. Go up. Just type in putty.org.
Okay. This I typed, then I came here.
Oh, it takes you to this page.
Yes.
Hmm. You have to click on here. You can download Putty here. Yeah.
It's taking me to this page.
Yeah, then 64
Wait.
bit.
This one, installer file, MSI installer. Is this one?
Yes.
Yes. Download the installer file.
Okay. Just a setup, no? I just need to click next, I think.
Yep.
Here.
Yes.
Okay. It takes so much time or no?
It is faster normally.
Okay. For me, it
Okay.
is.
No, it
Uh,
should happen. This is like very slow. It should have been
it's
done.
very
Don't
slow.
cancel it. It will. No, don't cancel
I
it.
don't cancel it. Okay.
Wait for it to
Okay.
complete. In the meantime, can you
Mhm.
press the Windows key and search for PuttyGen? Might have already have it. Just press the Windows key in your lab keyboard and
Okay,
search
Windows
for
key you are
PuttyGen.
saying. Okay.
Yeah,
I think it started in some message has came.
yeah. You have to say just give it a permission.
Yes, no? Okay. I did, yes. It's installing. So I should search for the putty now also on Windows.
PuttyGen. Yes. Search
Okay.
for PuttyGen.
Okay. It's asking me to download. It's not there on my machine, I think, still. Maybe when I
Okay.
finish.
Let this complete. Click on finish and then try again.
Yeah, I clicked finish.
Yeah. Close this and
Yeah.
then try the search box again.
Yeah.
So now
I think
see,
it
you
came
can see
now.
it in apps.
This, no?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah.
can you please
Now
stop sharing
I need
and
to
we'll
load first, no?
continue? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, yes. I need to load it first, right?
Yes, you have to load it.
Okay, I'll just stop sharing and I'll try here. Okay.
Uh, Rishi, I have created a new. I'm just creating a new EC2 instance. I created a new key pair while creating instance. I downloaded the key pair. It is my office laptop, so I can't see the downloaded one in the Google one. Where I can see that downloaded one?
You will have to find it out. I cannot help there. So what browser are you using to download it?
Yeah, Google one. Normally, I use the Firefox. There, I used to see, but this Google one.
So in the Chrome, if you press Control plus J for Jackal together, it will show you all the downloads.
In the Windows one, Control plus.
Uh, on the Chrome browser, if you press Control and J,
Okay.
Chrome, it will show you the downloads. Okay. Uh, we will continue. Mahesh, this session is being recorded, so if you face any issues, you can
Yeah, yeah,
always come back and see it, right?
yeah.
Uh,
I can do it. Yeah, please.
so
Continue.
And
once every
yeah, just one second, Rishi. For this, I loaded the key and then I click on load and now I clicked on generate. So
no, you
is
don't
it
have to
generate?
generate. You have to no, you have to load and then click on save private key.
Okay, then I should cancel it or
You cancel it and do it again. But let's continue. Do it once you have some time.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. So others who have converted and now how do we connect to the EC2 instance? So to connect to the EC2 instance or to connect to any server, what we need is the IP of that server. So if you see, this is my list of EC2 instances. Currently, I have one. So what I'll do is I'll select it and then I'll see this IP over here, IP4 public IP. I'll copy this IP. Okay, I'll copy this IP. Then this time I need to open PuTTY. So PuTTY, I need to open PuTTY and in the hostname box, I'll paste the public IP that I copied, The same thing, see 54, 236, 209, 134, I copy and pasted it. Once pasted, I'll go on the left hand side and SSH, all of you see written here, just click on the plus, it will expand, then click on auth, not on plus, click on auth and say browse. Now, once you click on browse, you need to now provide the key file that you converted. Okay, I'll select this. Okay, done. Then I'll say open. Okay, let me repeat that again. Okay, I'll repeat that again. So what we have to do is we have to copy the public IP, open putty, and paste the IP over here. Go on the left hand side, click on SSH, then auth, then browse, and you have to provide the converted file. Select it, say open, and it will ask you a login as the default username. The default username is EC2-user. Click on enter and you are now connected to the Linux machine. Okay. Now, why did we require putty to connect to this server is because to remotely connect to a Linux machine, we require SSH. SSH. Okay, this. To connect to a Linux machine, we require SSH to connect to Linux. What do we need to connect to Windows? How do we remotely connect to Windows? We require remote desktop. Okay.
MSTSC.
It's same thing. MSTSC is remote desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Connect to Windows. Yeah. So since SSH is not available in Windows, that is why we need a tool putty which allows us to SSH from Windows to Linux. Now, once connected to this EC2 instance, we can make whatever changes we want. We are now connected to the operating system. We can say that convert to root. So with this command, sudo bash, I am now root. If you see root, earlier it was EC2 user. I can check that with the ID command. So if I run ID, it will show me the details. Okay, so we get these details and see if I have to install any software. So how do I install a software in Linux? So to install a software in Linux, the command is yum install and the software name. So software name, say I want to install HTTPD. I'll say this. So it showed me certain details. So if you see, I did this. Then it gave me certain details. Here it says installing this guy, app util and blah blah blah. Then it says install size is this, download size is this. Is this okay for you? Okay, is this okay for me? So I'll say yes. I'll press Y. And I'll say enter. So it installed a software, right? Similarly, any software we want to install, we need to know the name of that software, and we will simply run it. So I say I want to install yum install vim, yes, another software. I'll hit enter. It says nothing to do because it is already installed. So it's a package already installed and it's the latest version. So nothing to do. So this is how we install a software. So yum install is the command and software name is the name of the software that needs to be installed. Okay. So this is all about connecting to a Linux machine from a Windows laptop. Okay. I need putty. And the key needs to be converted because this software putty does not understand that .pem file. So when we download the key file, it is .pem format. So .pem format putty does not understand. So that is why it provides the software putty gen so that we can convert. Okay. Okay. So to delete this machine, what I need to do is I need to go to actions, instance state, and say terminate. Now what we will do is we will launch another instance, and this time this will be a Windows machine. Okay, so how do we launch Windows? What change will be needed to launch Windows? Do I need to change anything over here?
Yes, we need to select machine image, Windows machine image.
We need to select Windows machine image. So I'll scroll down below and there is free tier eligible Microsoft Windows Server base image. So I'll select this. I'll always go with t2.micro because I'm not changing hardware. I'll say configure instance details. No changes here again, same as before. Add storage. So if you notice, this time storage is 30 GBs. Earlier it was 8 GBs. So for Windows, the default storage size is 30 GBs because 8 GB is not sufficient enough to install Windows Server. Okay. We'll say tags, we'll let it be configure security group. So since you are now launching a Windows machine, you will again say create a new security group. Okay, because for Windows and Linux, the security groups are different.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
you
at
can hear me, right?
Yeah, we are not able to hear you.
You hear me now?
After create new, it was audible. After that, no.
No, now?
Now, okay.
Yeah, now okay.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying that you have to say create a new security group for Windows, and you have to say Windows, give it a name, anything like Windows Sec group, so that you know that this is a Windows one. Okay, for Windows machine. I will select which I have already. So I'll select this. I'll say review and launch, and I'll say launch. Okay, it says select an existing key pair. We can use the same key pair as it was for Linux for Windows also. I'll say launch instances. Okay, I'll click on over here. So this instance, this server that is being created, this is a Windows server. How do I verify what server is this? So I'll have to scroll down below and look for the AMI ID. So this says Windows servers 2019 English full base something. Okay, so let it start and come in. So this needs to be 2 by 2. We'll wait for that time. In the meantime, we'll discuss about something else. So tags, we have been leaving this step 5 as like what are tags? So tags are key value pairs that help you to identify certain things about an EC2 instance or about anything that is there in AWS. So let me go to EC2 to explain what I'm saying. So we'll go to EC2. Tags are there for all the resources that we create in AWS. So I'll go to here. Okay. So see here, this server is created and there is a name which is empty. We don't see what is there in the name, right? So this is where tags come into picture. So what we'll do, we'll say add tag and say name, and we'll give it a value. We'll say this is my Windows server. Okay. Then I can add another tag. By the way, the tag with key as name is defined by AWS, and this is always same. Other key names I can define. I can see like owner of the server. I'll say Rishi. You can say like purpose of the server. I can say class demo, right? I can keep on defining keys and defining values to it, assigning values to it. So tags are very similar, like we used to paste stickers on our notebooks and our books when we were in school. Okay, so when we were in school, we used to paste a sticker that said name. So whose notebook this is? We set class, what class it is. We set school, section, subject. So that helped us to identify without opening the notebook or without going into details about anything. By seeing the name sticker, by seeing the sticker, we were able to identify, okay, this notebook belongs to this person. This person is in section this. The notebook is of this subject. Similarly, here tags helps us to identify details. Okay, so let's change tags for this server. Select this, I'll go to tags and I'll say add and edit. I'll say create. So I'll say name, I'll call this as Windows demo. Okay, I'll add another tag, I'll say owner, I'll call this as Rishi. I'll say purpose, I'll call this as class demo. Okay, so if I save this, here you will now see the name of the server. Okay, plus the other details you can see, like who is the owner. So if you are working in a big team where there are say 10, 15 team members, this becomes kind of mandatory. Like you don't know who created a specific server, so that you can say that every server that is being created needs to have owner defined. So give a name. Every server that is being created needs to have a purpose defined. So define a purpose, right? So tags are key value pairs that are used to identify what is supposed to be done with a specific EC2 instance or an IAM user or any resource that we will be creating in future. Okay. So now this server is in running state and the status checks have passed. Let's connect to the Windows machine. So how do we connect to a Windows machine? Okay, we'll copy the public IP from here and we will do remote desktop. So we'll search for MSTSC. That will give us remote desktop connection. I'll click on over here. Okay, and I will paste the IP. Fine. I'll paste the IP and I'll say connect. Now, what do I need to connect remotely to a Windows server? What else do I need? Anyone? What else do I need?
Username and password.
A username and password. How do I get a username and password? So to get a username and password, I'll go to actions and say get Windows password. I'll click on this. It is saying key name is this and I have to provide the file. So I'll say browse. And this time you have to provide the file that you downloaded, not the file that you converted. So I'll select this, the downloaded file, and I will say decrypt password. So here is the password. I'll copy this. The username is administrator. So let's use this. So I'll add this. Spelling mistake. I copied the password, I pasted the password and say OK. It's asking me yes. Okay. And it is now connected to, it is still doing remote desktop.
I'm on class.
Guys, can you please mute yourself if you're not speaking? Okay, so I'm now connected to the remote machine to the Windows EC2 instance that I just launched. Okay, if you'll see here, the time it says is 10:42 a.m. Not sure if you can see that, but it is 10:42 a.m. because this machine is located in the US. This is located in Virginia. Okay, can you see the different screen? Yes.
Yes, Rishi.
So now to disconnect, we'll simply say disconnect. Before going, so see here I can see the address details, the instance size, availability zone, architecture, total memory, and all those details are populated over here on the desktop. Okay. So this is how we connect to a Windows machine. So to connect, I'll show you once more. Okay. What we have to do is we have to copy the IP. Then we have to search for MSTSC, that is remote desktop. Okay, we'll paste the IP so it is already populated. The username is this. I'll say connect. How do I get the password? I'll go to actions, get Windows password. I will browse and I will provide the key file that I downloaded, not that I converted. I'll select this. I'll say decrypt password. I'll copy it and paste it. and I'll say okay. So this will connect me to the Windows machine. Okay, once you are connected to a specific server, whether it's Linux or Windows, now whatever is possible, whatever you can do as an operating system engineer, or whatever powers you get when you are connected to the operating system, the same stuff you can do over here. For example, I can go to Windows. Okay, I can look for some accessories. I can open a calculator. I can open the calculator over here, try it out. This something else got opened, not sure. Okay, I can go on the PowerShell and run PowerShell commands. So now I have access to the operating system. I can change whatever way I can want. I can change the username too, by the way. I can change the password of this guy. So once the password is changed, I need to remember it, because when I go and decrypt the password, we get a different password, right? That once we change it, right, we won't get it there. So we have to remember what is the new password. Okay. So we will disconnect from here. Any questions on this, guys? No questions? Okay.
Hello.
So I am, yeah.
Rishi,
Yes.
hello. I have a question like if we are able to do anything on that machine, remote machine, does it happen? Some people try to, do some things which are not like, which are not intended to be done, to delete something or something like that.
You can do it.
Okay,
See,
so
what is intended to be done and what is not intended to be done, I cannot control once I have allowed you access to the operating system level, right?
yeah.
So if you say, for example, you are working on a project, okay? You're working on a project and you are working as a developer, okay? So
Yes.
once your team lead or your manager gives you access to the code
Mm-hmm.
that is of an application, he's sure that you're not going to do something bad with the code. You won't
Yeah.
introduce new bugs, right? He
Mm-hmm.
has that much. He has that faith in you. That is only when he allowed you access to the code. Similarly with these servers. So whenever you will join a team where
Mm-hmm.
they allow you access to the servers, they will only allow
Mm-hmm.
once they have the faith that you are not going to log into the server and go delete something, go destroy something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mistakes
Mm-hmm.
happen, but it should not be a known mistake that you go and forcefully clear out something or
Mm-hmm.
delete something, right? So that should not.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Any other doubts, anyone?
Yes, sir.
Now,
Whenever we do SSH, it is only up to the only for command line only for, or we can do a genome also.
Genome is not allowed by default. You can only do SSH to Linux machines.
So it's only for command line.
Yes. Yes. So if you have to set up GUI, then you go and install it, then allow access, and then it may allow. But by default, it is only command line.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So now let's go and make some more changes to this. So up till now we were launching servers which were plain Jane. We were not changing anything. Okay. Let's make some change to this. So I'll say launch. Now what we'll do is we will launch a server which has some predefined softwares installed into it. So we'll go select the Linux machine. We'll select this. Okay. Now I'll scroll down below and I'll go into advanced details section. This section. Okay. Here you will notice metadata, this. There is a section called as user data. Okay. A section called as user data in advanced details. Now here in the box or as a file, I can browse and upload a script or a set of commands that get executed when the server is being started the first time. Okay, so here if I write a script which is, so this is a Linux machine, so I'll write Linux commands. Okay, which where I go and say install a software. So I'll call this as httpd. So I'm saying yum install, that is a command to install a software, and install what software? I'm calling it httpd. This is a software. Okay, then I'll say service httpd start. So in Linux, once a software is installed, you need to enable it. Enabling is you have to install the service. Okay, I'll say this. Okay, I'm only doing this. So what I want to do is when my server comes up, it should have these. It should have this software installed. Okay, I can write down a few more softwares. Like I can say install PHP also. So after this, I can say yum install, say Python. Maybe Python 3, maybe PHP, maybe MySQL. So whatever softwares I want to install, I can write it down over here. Okay, and I will do one more thing. So echo is a command that prints anything that is written in between the quotes on the screen. So I'll say hi there, how are you? Okay, now this will print on the screen, but we won't have access to the screen because the server is still coming up. So what we will do is we will redirect this output to a file, and I'll redirect this to, I'll say to a file called as home ec2 minus user, that is the location, and I'll call this as myfile.txt. Okay, so I'm saying install a software, start it, and then write this down to this file. Okay, fine. I'll say add storage.
Rishi, is it
No changes.
HTTPS or HTTPD?
It is HTTPD, double TPD. This is Apache's code name for Linux.
Okay.
Okay, I'll say add storage. No changes here. The storage always remains the same tags. So this time I'll add a tag. I'll say name, and this is I'll call this as web server. I'll say configure security group. So this is a Linux machine. You guys already have a security group. Just select the pre-existing one, say review and launch, and say launch. Okay. So this server which comes up should have the software installed, and it should also have a file created with the content that I said. Okay, so let it come up. I'll also open a page, a browser window, and I'll copy this. So let's try to connect. It has come up. So I'll connect. How do I connect? I paste the IP address. I go to SSH. I say auth. I say browse. I double click on the key file. I'll select this, and then I provide the default username. The default username is c2 minus user. Hit enter. Okay. So where I created the file, I created the file in /home/ec2 user. This directory I created the file in. Yeah. So I'll do ls -n to list out. The file is there. Let's read what is there in the file. So it has hi there, how are you? Okay. This is what we wanted to. Otherwise, what echo does is if I say echo hi there, it will print it out on the screen, which I would not be able to see if I would have not written that to a file. But if I use greater than sign, that means write this content into a file. Okay. Okay. Now we will go to the browser. So this is the IP which I copied. This is the IP of my server. What do I see? I say Amazon Linux AMI test page, and this is Apache. How do I see this? I see this because I installed HTTPD, that is the code name for Apache in Linux. Not sure? Doubts?
Didn't get Rishi. Like you use that in that user data to install Apache, MySQL, and others.
No, I only
But
installed Apache. I did not write anything else. So I'll show you the user data. Okay. This is what I wrote. I did not write anything else. I was telling you that you can write more, but I only installed Apache, nothing apart.
yeah, you installed Yum, you installed Apache, then you using the print echo. Hi there, how are you? Okay, so this one we got it. Then once
Okay.
the server, once you connected this server via this putty, I couldn't get to what it is.
So I connected to the server via PuTTY. And here, if
Okay,
you notice, I am trying to create a file, myfile.txt, with contents, hi there, how are you, right?
okay.
And this file is located here. Yes. So I
This
connected to PuTTY.
EC2 minus user is our username, right?
But it is also a directory name. This is the home directory of the user.
Okay,
This could have
okay,
been any name, right?
okay.
But you need to know whether that directory exists or not.
Yeah,
So I, from my experience, know that this directory gets created whenever, because this is the default user.
okay. So you meant to say in my file dot text file. So you it printed hi there, how are you?
Yes, that is what we saw here. See,
Okay,
we did cat my file and we saw this there.
okay,
Yeah. And
okay,
this is
okay.
located here. How do I know this is located? So I did PWD. PWD meant present working directory, which is this, and I
Yeah,
was able to see what is written.
sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. Got it.
So once this was done, what I showed you is I copied the public IP. I copied the IP. I went to a browser and I pasted the IP there, and I was able to see the default Linux page, the default test page for Apache. Guys, can you please mute? Yeah. This was possible because we installed HTTPD, that is Apache, in this server. How do we know it got installed? It got installed because we had written a command yum install HTTPD, that means install HTTPD, service HTTPD start, that means start the service. Okay, I'll show you one more thing. So I'm creating a file in the root of the web server and I'm writing my own content. So as of now here I get a test page. Okay, this is a test page which is generated by the application. I don't want this test page. What I want is I want my own page, my own website. So I'll write my own website page. This is my site. You are not welcome. Okay, so I'll write anything. Okay. This is a plain Jane text page. And now if I refresh, I will see that data, that data over here. So what I just showed you is I created a server. Then I installed Apache on it. So Apache is an application that is used to convert a server into a web server. Okay. So Apache is an application which is used to convert a server into a web server. Okay. And once I was able to install Apache, I created a demo page, a single page website in that server. Okay, if I have to create multiple pages of website, I have some content. So let me create this. I'll create one page. Okay, I'll write some HTML thing. So I'll do again. Okay, now I'm writing this. So here it says this is HTML. So my first heading, my first paragraph, I'm connecting this to a second page. I'll save this. I'll copy the contents of the second page, which are this. Hopefully that is what it is calling. I'll paste this, and now if I go and refresh this, so this will change. This will change to the new content. My first heading, my first paragraph. If I click on this, it will take me. That second.html is not present. Naming mistake. So this should have been HTML. Refresh this, and now I refresh, it will show. So this is the second page. Okay. So a very small example of how a web server is created and how it can be one page, multiple page, 3 pages, 4 pages, 10 pages, whatever. So the idea is, or the process is, you create a server. Then once the server is up, you install Apache, you install Tomcat, you install Nginx, or if it is Windows, you install IIS. Okay, or even Tomcat works in Windows. So you install a software that enables or that converts your server as a web server. Once that software is set up, so you copy the public IP and go on the browser and see if you are able to get the test page that we saw earlier. And once that is verified that your server is now behaving as a web server, what you have to do is you have to copy the contents of your website in the root of the web server. In the root of the web server, for Apache, it is var www.html. Okay, if you have images, you copy the images. If you have movies, if you have MP3 files, if you have content, all needs to be moved inside this directory, and then it will be accessible over the internet, over the browser. Okay. Questions, doubts?
Hello, Rishi. I have
Yes.
one. Actually, when you have entered a few shell scripting in the user data section, so there you started the server. So, and then you install the HTTP, that Apache web server. Then you installed it there. But what is the main purpose of this user data? Is it just for pre-installation of these things, or actually I was thinking this
Yes.
we can do it later also once we logged in. Then also we can do. So what is the main purpose of this user data?
Okay. You can do it once you are logged in, right? There's no doubt about that. That can be done. Okay. When we have one server to create, two server to create, 3 servers to create, we can do it when we are logged in, right? What if I tell you to set up 100 servers which all have Apache installed into it?
Okay.
There's no change. Same type of servers, all having Apache installed into it. How are you going to do it? Manually, it is going to be a very difficult job to do.
So then
Right?
we can do some programming logic over there, is it?
That is
We
the
can.
programming logic I showed you, right?
Yeah, you have written maybe like if in case of 100 Apache server you need to launch, so we need to write a shell script there itself, means looping or something, whatever we will be going to do.
No,
That
no,
we
no,
need.
no. So
No?
wait, I'll show you. I'll show you. So 2 changes. One is, instead of 1, you will say 100. Then you will scroll down below and write the shell script over here, and you will continue with the rest of the stuff. So this will launch 100 servers which all has Apache running into it.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is just an example that there is an option available wherein you can go and write shell scripts or say anything else. If it is Windows, you can write PowerShell scripts. Okay, which can be bigger size also. So remember, there was an option where I can upload a file instead of manually typing it down, I can simply upload a file. So if I scroll, there was an option as a file. So I'll say browse, and then the scripts wherever it is written, I'll upload that file, and it will go and do all that stuff it is written. Don't take this is like 3 lines and I can do it manually. Of course, that can be done manually. Okay, but wherever you are doing a
Yes.
bunch of other stuff, then manually will not be possible, right?
So there is any limit of like maximum number of server we can start, or it's like anything maximum
For
number of
your
instances where we
accounts,
can launch at the.
yes. For your accounts, you can see the limits over here. So if you
Okay,
go on the
okay.
EC2 left hand
So
side,
some.
you can click on. There are some default limits. For free accounts, the limit is 5. So you won't be able to create more than 5 EC2 instances. Okay, but for production accounts or for bigger accounts
Okay.
which have which pay tens of $1,000s, their limit is higher. Okay, they might be able to launch 1,000, 10,000, 5,000 instances. Amazon will not go and put up a limit, right? Even though if there is a soft limit, we can also always go to support and ask them to add more limit. So that option is there.
Okay. And one more thing, like usually when we run some scripts from our command prompt, we give some initial parameters. Like, some if we have two variables A and B, we used to pass some variable from the command line prompt. Is it behaving the same way or no?
You can do that over here also. So in view change user data, say for example, you wanted to fire up a script. That script is inside your server. You know that script is inside your server. So you'll write that details over here also. Start that script and pass those parameters. It will run it.
Okay. Okay, so it will work the same way. Like it will take this parameter and launch the script. Okay. We
Yeah.
can use it that.
The script needs to be in the script needs to be in the server first, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys, on this one?
When you are doing, suppose you are launching this server, it doesn't check for some permission, like whatever we are going to do on those files have the permission to do all this stuff on them. If there is some permission problem, then does it give error?
See, once we are connected to the server, okay, once we are connected to the operating system, by default we have the root access to the operating system. By default we have the administrator access to the operating system. So once we have the administrator access on the operating system, we have full access on the operating system. We can whatever we want on that operating system. We can install things, we can delete files, we can change files, we can remove the files entirely, we can delete databases. You have the full rights.
Yeah, super user means okay.
You are a super user, right?
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions on this?
Can I install any other software like Vans, Jam, Plan using script?
You can install whatever you want. There's no stopping you, right? See, that is what I'm trying to say. Amazon's responsibility or Amazon's powers are till the level it may stop you from launching an EC2 instance, right? If I don't give the user permission, it won't be able to launch an EC2 instance. But if you have the power of launching an EC2 instance and connecting to it, right? So once you are connected to the operating system, you can install whatever is supported by that operating system and download the package, install it, do what. Okay, there have been cases where people started doing cryptocurrency mining on EC2 instances. Okay. So if cryptocurrency mining is illegal activity, but once you have the access to the operating system, you can do whatever you want. Amazon will not stop you because they don't know what you are doing on the operating system. Right? They don't have access to the operating system. So Amazon will not know what is happening at the operating system level. You can do whatever you want. Any more questions or shall we move ahead? Silence means we move ahead. Okay.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
So now if I refresh, this is not going to work because the instance has been deleted. Okay. So up till now, we saw how to create an EC2 Linux instance and how to connect to it, how to create a key file and convert the key file. We saw how to create a Windows instance, how to connect to a Windows instance, and we saw how to create a web server. Okay. So to create a web server, we have to install HTTPD. You can install anything else also. I simply installed HTTPD because it is one of the easiest web servers to manage. Okay, and we copied some files and we were able to access it. Okay, now coming to a different problem. Like Neetu was saying some time back, that why we have to go and write something in the user data. Why cannot we go and connect to the instance and do that? Okay, so one point. The second point was, we, even if we say write something in the user data, to copy the web server files, I had to do that manually, right? You would have noticed that I copied the code from here and then I had to paste it. So these are two files, very small files. So I was able to do it, and this was one server, I was able to do it. What if I have 100 pages of website which has, say, a few 10, 20, 50 images, maybe lots of audio content, lots of video content. So what I'm trying to say is, what if I have my application size up to, say, some GB or something like that, then doing it, copying it manually even to one server is going to be a problem. Agreed? Yeah, it will
Yes,
be a
Yes.
problem.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
it's, I won't be launching one server, right? I might be launching, say, I might be requiring 10 servers, 20 servers, 30 servers, all with the same configuration. Is a valid requirement, right? When I have an application which has application code, application content of 1 GB, that means it is a big application. So it will be running on more than one servers. It will be running on 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, maybe 100 servers. Okay. In that case, this is not going to work. This, say 100 over here, I still have to go and copy the code manually, which is not going to work. So what I have to do, any ideas what I can do so that I don't have to do again and again manually? Maybe I have to do once manually, but next time onwards it can be done automatically. Any ideas?
You can add that file in that particular directory.
But how? I will have to do it manually, right? Once the servers are up, I will have to do that manually. I'll have to add those things manually, which I don't want to do.
In user data, we had file option also, no? Can we use
Yeah.
that one?
But I'll be only able to upload one file. I have 1 GB of data.
Rishi, I didn't get the query. What was it?
We are using something right now, and we use this every time we launch an instance. That has the answer. If someone is
So
speaking, I
Rishi,
can't understand. The voice is all garbled.
we need to help. We need to get a help from third-party software like FileZilla kind of thing.
No,
Hello.
yeah, I don't want to use a third-party software.
Okay.
And see, even say, agreed, that FileZilla software or a WinSCP tool or something which can copy your content from your laptop to the servers, right? My question is, or my only concern is, that you are running, say, 50, 30, maybe 100 servers. Doing to all the servers manually is, even though, say, you are running 30 servers, you are actually moving 30 GB of data, 1 GB to each, and doing that manually. Okay. Now say we do it. Say we go and do it manually the first time. Now everything is up and running fine. And a week later, my boss comes and says, dude, you need to launch 20 more servers which have the application set up into it. What are you going to do? You are going to do that again manually,
No.
right? Because the first time we did manually, so second time also we'll be doing the same stuff. But that is not the proper way to do it. Correct?
To find out
Okay.
someone.
So my question is clear to everyone.
Yes.
Question is clear. Okay. So
Same set
I'm
of work to be repeated. We want to bypass that and do it right. That was the question.
sorry, come again.
The same set of whatever like creating already created maybe 30 servers and 10 GB there are 10 each we have to put 1 GB hard disk, 1 GB memory, then we have to upload the files or maybe create the pages manually. First time we are doing that is fine, and in the second time again we need to do on another 20 servers. So we don't want to repeat the manual work. We want to do it
Yes,
automatically.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, I don't want to do it for 30 servers also. I want to do it only for one server. And then from there on, any server which is launched will have all those settings predefined into it. And I'm saying the answer lies on something which we have been using for launching every server. Okay. So what is the difference between this AMI and this AMI? What is the
It
difference
has
between
some
these two?
it has some predefined commands,
This
no?
is Amazon Linux. This not predefined
That is
commands. This has pre-installed packages. So it has AWS command line
yeah,
tools, Python, Ruby, Perl, and Java
yeah.
pre-installed into it.
Okay.
Okay. This has nothing installed into it. Okay. So what happens if I use this? I get this pre-installed, but if I use this, I will have to install it. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And this is
Yes.
kind of similar thing I want, that when I launch my server, I need my application files to be part of that server. Correct?
Yes.
So getting idea, how can we do that?
Yes, with that user data option only, right?
No, not the user data. Okay. Let me reframe the question. I want you to launch a Linux machine. Could be any Linux, could be Red Hat Linux, could be Amazon Linux, could be SUSE Linux, I don't care. I want you to launch a Linux machine, which when comes up should have AWS CLI, Python, Ruby, and Perl already installed into it. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, then we'll select the second one, Amazon Linux AMI 2018.
You will select this.
Which,
Okay. Now my question changes. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, someone was saying something?
no, Rishi, you can continue.
No? Okay, so now my question changes to that I want you to launch a server which when comes up should have web server installed into it and it should contain my website contents. So how can I do that? I need to have an AMI. I need to have an AMI which contains that data. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to have an AMI that contains that data. So that means I need to create my own AMI because that AMI Amazon is not going to provide me, correct? Which is what we talked about in my AMI section when we were discussing AMIs. Okay, it says you have not created any AMIs. Now, this might come as a surprise. But just to give you all a heads up that the topics which we discussed previously, or the topics that we are discussing today, or the topics which we will be discussing in next Saturday's class, if you don't revise it, if you don't go through it over the week, so first of all, you tend to forget some percentage of it. Okay. The second problem will be that all of these topics will keep on referring them in somewhere or the other during the course, like the AMI part. Okay, it was a simple thing. We discussed all of these things, right? Like what is quick start, what is my AMIs, what is marketplace, what is community AMIs, what is an AMI. We discussed all of that. But since most of you did not uh, revise it, did not go over it, you missed that, right? So we will create our own AMI. How do we create our own AMI? That is easier. How do we create? The important question to answer is you should know when to create your own AMI. Okay. So for this scenario, say we have to create our own AMI. So how do we create our own AMI? We require a web server. So I'll say yum install http. I'll say -y. The server will be installed. Okay. The server is installed. I'll say service httpd start. Then I'll say chkconfig httpd on. So this command chkconfig httpd on will start the service every time the server starts. Okay. If I do a restart, the service will not start automatically. This command will make it start automatically. Okay. Now I have to copy the files of my website. So I'll do that. Okay. How do I copy? So my example is like super small. So I'll copy one file. Okay, I'll copy the second file also. Second page. Okay, and I'll verify whether this is working or not. Right? If it is not working now, it's not going to work with the AMI. So I'll verify that. Verification is very important. It should work like it is. Then only it is going to work when the server is started. Now I have to create an AMI. So how do I create an AMI? That is super easy. So go to actions, image, and say create image and give it a name. I'll call this as my web server AMI. Fine. And I will say create image. It says view pending image. So let's check how it's happening. I'll refresh. So nothing changes over here, right? The server is running on its own. Nothing will change. The AMI is being created and I can see it over here. This is in pending state. Okay. So let's wait for this to be ready. It will take a few minutes. We'll wait for it. Let's refresh and verify whether it's ready. It's still pending. So we'll wait for it. So see, this is owned by me. This is my owner and this is private to me. Even if you have the AMI ID, which is this, none of you will be able to use this because this is private. This is private to this AWS account. Other people cannot see this. But if I go to actions, I say modify image permissions and I can say make it public. So if it is public, any one of you can use it. Okay, so I'll cancel this. I'll keep this as private. So this is now available. Okay. Okay. Now what happens if I delete this EC2 instance? What happens if I delete this EC2 instance?
AMI also going to delete. Yes, maybe vanish.
AMI will be deleted.
Yes.
I think
Okay,
AMI will be there. No?
AMI will be there. So we have two statements which are canceling each other. Yeah, what other things? What happens if I delete this EC2 instance?
It should not allow because that is the parent one, right? It is like a parent-child relationship.
So let me clarify that. It can be deleted. But what happens to the AMI?
AMI
So
remains.
the answer lies in the definition of the AMI. Who can help me? Who can explain me what is an AMI? Okay.
AMI,
Okay.
as you told, na? Yeah.
It is nothing but the Amazon machine image, which contains all the, which is nothing but that operating system, which has got what CPU, what is the network performance, the memory size.
No, no. It has no CPU defined. It has no memory defined. It has no network defined. It has no relation to the hardware. What was
There,
It
the
is
analogy to
it
the
is
AMI?
a hello. Yeah, Rishi is just like a pre-configured template of the creation of
Pre-configured
some
template.
virtual. Yeah, of the
Agreed. What
virtual
did
servers.
what did I compare an AMI with?
Bootable DVD, that kind of.
Bootable DVD, right? So let's talk about a
Yeah.
Yes.
bootable DVD. When we create a DVD from a running server, a DVD is independent of the server. Is there any relation with the server once the DVD is ready? No, right? I can delete the server, I can burn down the server, the DVD still remains. So
Yes.
similarly over here, even though the server goes, the AMI remains. AMI has no relation to the DVD, to the server. Okay,
Okay.
so now if I
Yeah.
go and say launch instance, instead of using this AMI, I will use my AMI. I'll select this. No changes whatsoever apart from changing the AMI. I won't change anything. You can see that, except like selecting my own security group, as I do always. I will launch. I'll select the key pair and launch an instance. Done. Okay. Now, if I go and hit the public IP on the browser, I will see my site over there. Let it come up. I'll show you. So every time now, if I have to launch a server which needs to have my application pre-set up into it, my web servers predefined into it, what will I do? I will go and use the same AMI which I created to do that. Right? Making sense? Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
See, see the IP 54.242. That is what it is. Yeah. Yes. No. Not getting sense. Getting it?
Yeah. Issue.
So
Yes. Yes.
in real life scenarios, most of the times there are AMIs created which are always used. Okay, these AMIs are customized for the specific application for the specific organization, and we use mostly those AMIs instead of using the marketplace AMIs or the quick launch AMIs. The first few servers are always created by quick launch, but once we go and we are able to create our own AMIs, we are we don't use the AMIs which are part of the quick launch part. Okay, by the way, to delete an AMI, we have to say deregister. So I'll say actions deregister to deregister an AMI. It will be removed from over here. Then there is another change which I'll teach you later. So I'll have to go and delete from here. Okay. Okay. So now I can go ahead and talk of, we can discuss some other topic in EC2. EC2 is big. So we have like done 20-25% of EC2. There are a bunch of other concepts in EC2. We can discuss about those, or you can take 5 to 10 minutes to practice out launching a Windows machine and setting up a web server on Linux machine. Whatever way you guys feel comfortable, we can do this. We can do that. I can do that. See, for this question, I need some response. If no response, I'll assume that you are okay with me moving ahead with other topics.
Rushi, we will move ahead. Means we will practice later.
Okay. So make sure to practice. Okay. Because
Yeah, because if some doubt came, then again we will throw some time. We
okay.
will take some time to sort out the
Yeah,
doubts. It
sure.
will take long session.
Okay. Okay, let it be. I will be using this instance. So whenever we have been launching instances up till now, we always took the default storage that is being provided. We always took the default storage that is there. We never tried to increase or decrease. Okay, we never tried to add a new volume or remove a volume which is already there. Okay, so how is storage being provided to EC2 instances? So EC2 instances are being provided storage via EBS. What is EBS? EBS is Elastic Block Storage. Okay, EBS is Elastic Block Storage, using which we get storage for our EC2 instances. Okay, so an Elastic Block Store is a concept where there is a bank of storage volumes. When I say bank of storage volumes, so this storage volume bank will have a capacity of a few petabytes. Okay, of a few petabytes of storage, it will have the capacity. Out of this few petabytes, say this has a capacity of 1 petabyte. So out of this capacity of 1 petabyte, we are allocated a volume which is of size 8 GB for our server. What is a volume? A volume is a logical separation, a logical partition of storage from a bank of storage which contains some petabytes of data. Okay, so a volume is a logical separation from a bank, from a big storage, to provide us some storage that is required for our servers. Okay, now if we have to add or extra storage for our servers, how do we do this? One thing is we can do during the launch time. Okay, during the launch time, we can go to launch an instance. And in the add storage part, we can say, okay, root volume 8 GB is too less for me. I need 100 GB for root volume. Plus, I need some extra storage also. Okay, I need say 1000 GB. Okay, extra storage for say my other use case. Okay, so I mention other. Say I need another 1000 GB for something else. Maybe I need 16,000 GB. That's 16 terabytes. That is the maximum volume size, by the way. I cannot go beyond this. So if I say 17,000, this is not going to work out. Okay, it will give you an error. So the maximum volume size can be 16 terabytes. Okay. Okay. So depending on how many volumes I need, I can add 10 volumes apart from the root volume to a single server. I can keep on defining the size of the volume that I want, and I can keep on adding new volumes, new logically separated storage sections from the bank of storage that is there, called as Elastic Block Store. Okay. Okay. provided by AWS, they are of majorly two types, SSD and magnetic. Okay, so what is the difference between an SSD and a magnetic drive? Any ideas on that? A difference between a magnetic solid state storage and a solid state drive. An example will work for me. So an SSD is a solid state drive where the way the data is stored is different as compared to a magnetic drive. So memory cards, most of you have seen memory cards, they are based on the fundamentals of a solid state drive. A magnetic drive is a hard disk drive where we used to have a disk which used to spin at some speeds, and there was a head which used to read and write data from it. Okay, so the way the data is stored is different in a magnetic drive and it is different in a solid state drive. So AWS provides two default options. One is SSD and one is magnetic. Okay, both are available. So we can see the details here. If I say create volume, so here if you see there is general purpose provision, these two are SSDs, all three below are magnetic hard disk drives. Okay, I can give a size, minimum is 1 GB, maximum is 16 terabytes. Okay, and where I need to be, I can define that stuff. Okay, this is doing it when the server is launched. Okay, this is when the server is being launched. Okay, then there is an option you see, delete on termination. So delete on termination option is when the EC2 instance is deleted, should the volume be also deleted? Like if you would have noticed, when I came to this page, there was an 8 GB volume, but when I refreshed, it went away. Why it went away is because when I came to this page, my EC2 instance was in the process of being deleted. It was not deleted, it was in the process of being deleted. So as soon as my EC2 instance was deleted, the volume was also deleted, because by default, delete on termination is checked for root volumes. Okay, then there is an option called as encryption, whether I want to encrypt my volumes. Okay, so if I select this, my volume data, any data that is stored on this volume will be in encrypted state. Okay, the encryption will happen with the help of this key. This is the default EBS key that is provided by AWS, and all my data will be encrypted. Okay, for the other volume, delete on termination is not checked. That means this volume will not be deleted when the EC2 instance is deleted. This will be kept, and I can see the volume in this list even though when my EC2 instance is deleted, this will be deleted. Okay. Okay. Another option that you see over here is IOPS. That is input output operations per second that the volume can support. Input output operations per second that the volume can support. And here you see the for 100 GB, it is 300 IOPS out of 3000 IOPS. Okay, so if I reduce this to 8, I only get 100 IOPS. If I increase the size to 200 GB, this will be 600. Okay, so depending on the volume size, my IOPS increase or decrease. Minimum is 100, maximum is 3000 for a volume up till 1 terabyte. But if I create a volume more than a terabyte, my IOPS goes to 16,000 terabytes, 16,000 IOPS per second, input output operations per second. Okay, there is something called as throughput. So throughput is for magnetic volumes. So if I change this to throughput optimized, then I get a throughput. So if I say that 100 GB, so I get some throughput. IOPS is for SSDs, throughput is for magnetic. Okay, old hard drive, I get a different. Magnetic standard, I don't get any throughput. Okay, IOPS is for SSDs and throughput is for magnetic. Okay, okay. Another change is provisioned IOPS. Provisioned IOPS is where I can say how many IOPS I want. I can say I want 50,000 input output operations per second. Okay, so it requires some warning is there, but that works. So for 100 GB volume, if I require 40,000 50,000 IOPS, I will select provisioned IOPS. Provisioned IOPS is a feature where I can define the number of IOPS that I want. Okay, so provisioned IOPS is a special category of SSDs which allows me to select faster read-write solid-state drives. For a provisioned IOPS, I pay for storage and I pay for IOPS. For a general purpose SSD, I only pay for storage. There is no charge for IOPS. Whatever IOPS I get, that is free. That is included in the storage. But for a general provisioned IOPS, I pay for this and I pay for this. Okay. Okay. In magnetic, there are three types. There is cold, there is throughput optimized, there is magnetic standard. Magnetic standard is like a standard type of hard disk drive. Cold hard drive is like the cheapest one, which will be the slowest also. So if you select this, you only get 8 MB of throughput, 8 MB of data read per second. This is like the cheapest one, where these are used to for archival purposes. And we have throughput optimized, which is equivalent of provisioned IOPS. So here I can say I want these many throughputs, so I can create throughput that I want 25 MBs or I want say more. 1000. So this will go to 245. Okay. So on. So throughput optimized is a special category of a hard disk drive wherein you get a increased performance. Cold hard disk drive is a backup suitable hard disk drive. Magnetic standard is a standard hard disk drive similar to a general purpose. Provisioned IOPS is a hard disk drive where you can SSD where you can define IOPS also. Okay, so EBS, elastic block storage, gives me volumes, logically separated storage partitions from a bank of partition, which helps me to increase or add extra storage, remove extra storage, increase the storage on my EC2 instance. Okay, how do I create a volume? Say my EC2 instance is already up and running. This was already created and I want to add some extra volume. I'll say create a volume. I'll give it a size, say 1 GB. Okay, and I'll say create volume. The volume is created. Once this is created, I will select this and go to actions and say attach. Let it be available. So this is available. I'll say attach and I'll give the instance ID. No matching, no instances is running because if I go here, I don't have anything running. So if I had instances running, they will be listed down over here and then simply select it and say attach and it will be attached. Okay, once attached, I can go to the operating system and see whether I can see the extra storage or not. Okay, if I have to increase the size of storage for this volume, I can go to actions and say modify. I'll say modify and instead of 1 now I want 2 GB, so I'll say modify. Yes, close. So now if I refresh, this will become 2 GB. It will take some time, but the size will change. See, it is now 2 GB. Similarly, if I have to modify it again, this will not work. So I cannot decrease it, but I can always increase it. And say 5 GB and modify again, and it will modify to 5 GB. Okay. Clear doubts?
Rishi, volume is nothing but where we are going to store our content, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Storage,
based
the
on
hard disk drive on your laptop.
pardon me?
The hard disk drive of your laptop is volume.
Yeah. Based on our content or data, then everyone has to select how much GB or terabyte is required, and they have to purchase. They have to keep increasing or decreasing, whether it is a magnetic or whether it is a normal one.
Correct.
What is that IOPS, input output operations per second, means what it does? Why
That
we
is
need
how much, what is the amount of data that you can read or write per second from your volume from your storage.
So is it for the performance purpose required or?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
whenever you read data, right, whenever you are reading data from your storage, if you have a, say, cheaper storage like magnetic is slow, very slow. So it might allow you
Yeah.
to only do 100 reads per second, but SSDs are fast. They might allow you 1000 reads per second. So you might be able to do 1000 reads per second, depending on what type of, right?
Okay. And it like while creating, it says that while delete the termination checkbox was not checked. That means though the instance is terminated, the volume remains the same. So why, if the instance itself is not there, then why we need to keep the content there in that volume? So it should be deleted by default, right?
No. So say, I'll give you an example. You created your EC2 instance and
Yeah.
you attached a 100 GB volume which contains your extra content. Your valuable content is in the 100 GB volume. By
Okay.
mistake, somebody deleted your EC2 instance. So if delete on
Okay.
termination is checked, your content will be deleted with it, right?
Yeah.
That is a loss. So what happens is if your content is important, we don't delete the volume because the volume can be attached to another EC2 instance. I can attach a volume to another EC2 instance to recover the content. That is why if the content that is being stored in a volume is important, we don't delete the volume.
Okay, okay. So though the maybe instance one has been deleted, then we can use that volume in once we create a EC2 second instance or third instance, we can just attach and use that one.
Yes, but it has to be detached from the first instance and then attached to another one.
Okay, okay, okay. Got it. Thanks.
One
We
volume
get
cannot be part of two instances at the same point of time.
hello.
Yeah, someone was saying something.
So there is
Yeah,
a
last
massive